Right, it being 6 o'clock on February 24th, I call the Finance Committee meeting to order to start the discussions on the FY 2022 budget. Before we start, I want to read this from the governor. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, general law, Chapter 30A, subsection 18, and the governor's March 15, 2020 order concerning imposition on strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place. Meetings in the town of Oxford will be conducted via remote participation to the greatest extent possible. We will strive to provide access to such meetings via a link to call in or other similar option. In the event that we're unable to accommodate the same, despite best efforts, we will post recorded sessions of the meeting as soon as possible following the same. No in-person attendance or members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings. Now, call for a roll call.
Mr. Yule?
Present.
Mr. Bacon?
Present.
Ms. Mazeka?
Present.
Ms. O'Neill?
Present.
Ms. Wozniak?
Present.
Ms. Casey?
He's muted.
You need to unmute yourself.
Here.
Ms.
Present.
Casey?
Present.
Thank you.
Okay. Now, we have to approve the December the 16th minutes, and I think we received the revised copy. I think there was one omission, and Josh caught it, and we've added it. It had to do with the request on the bridge for $565,000 from the DPW. Has everybody had a chance to look at the revised minutes of the December? If so, do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Mr. Yule?
Yes.
Mr. Bacon?
Abstain.
Ms. Mazeka?
Yes.
Ms. O'Neill?
Yes.
Ms. Wozniak?
Abstain.
Ms. Casey?
Abstain.
And Ms. Casey?
Ms. Casey?
Yes.
Yes, okay. All right, that takes care of the approval of the minutes. The next item is to discuss the fiscal 2020 budget. Does everybody have the overlay sheet, the top sheet, and the detail sheets?
Yes.
Okay, so looking at the overlay sheet, the 10,000 foot view of what the tax levy looks like. We have almost 945,000, about 3.9% increase in the tax levy. We'll get into discussion, I think, as to how that increase came about, whether it's through new growth or remodeling, new excess value. And then we have below that a $23,625 increase in the 2.5 levy, which is about a 3.9% increase. We have no reserve for excess levy this year. Last year was 108. New growth conservatively stayed the same year to year, fiscal 21 and 22 at 225,000. No capital exclusions. Debt exclusion dropped from 422 to 407, about 15,000. Chapter 70 money with the cherry sheets. This is money from the states. As we can see, $46,890 was an increase in aid for education. However, right below it, charter tuition reimbursement decreased by $44,700. So it was almost a push when you look at those two numbers. Unrestricted general government aid, aka the lottery, was up $76,400, about 3.5%. Non-state aid, non-offset state aid was 226, which is an increase of 94,000. But right below it, other offset was a decrease of 71,000. So the net there was about 23,000. The mass building, the school building, stayed the same, reimbursement at 404. Local receipts, we've kept them the same, again, conservatively at 2,845,000. And the hope is that those receipts will bear some fruit. I know with the marijuana, last year we received about $300,000. That was a nice surprise. So I don't know where that is, but we budgeted conservatively 2,845,000, which is what we showed last year in FY21. So the total revenue was in FY21 was 41,630,794. This year it's 42,793,895, which is an increase of 1,163,101. When we go down to expenses, again, allowances for rebates, exemptions only. Those are the real estate and personal property exemptions. We kept that the same at 300,000 from FY21 to FY22. We have no overlay deficits for prior years. Education library offsets did decrease from 131,000 in FY21 to 60,229. I'm not sure we'll get into that with the library as to why or how that decrease evolved. State and county charges increased by 10,000 from 151 to 161. School choice sending tuition stayed about the same. It was 527,352 last year, FY21. This year it's 525,772. Charter school sending tuition increased dramatically, and that may have to do with the pandemic. I don't know. It went from FY21 from 236,711 to 409,428, an increase of 172,700, almost a 73% increase. Again, we'll get into that with the school department as to where they see their student population and what happened there. Special ed increased from 102 to $14,864. So earmarked non-appropriated expenses did increase from 1,347,368 in FY21 to 1,471,376, an increase of 124,000, about a 9.2% increase in expenses over the prior year. School budget for Oxford was last year, FY21 was 18,166,975. This year it's 18,775,975. That's an increase of roughly, it is $589,000 at 3.24%. Baypath, they just dropped off our budget, so but Trish has them, but you should be picking them up. Roger and I will have them since we're here. Trish will have copies for you. That increased Baypath from 1,245,372 to 1,333,047. That's an increase of 7%, $87,675, and usually that's driven by enrollment. So I'm assuming that some of our students, our population, decided to go to Baypath more than the prior year. But we'll get into that with Baypath as well. Baypath assessment dropped. That's the debt assessment that we all share in on their improvements. Went from 172,680 to 162,980, about a $9,700 increase. So when we look at school budgets, total school budgets from FY21 to FY22, we were at 19,585,027. Now we're at 20,272,02. Okay, which is a $686,975 increase, or a 3.5% increase. So both Baypath and the Oxford school system have an increase over the prior year of basically 3.5%. OPED funding, as you all recall, Katie put together a $5,000 increase year to year to fund the OPED account. So it was 55 in 21. It's now 60,000. The stabilization account, last year we put in 380,000. We're putting in free cash and if you've had a chance to look at your capital request report, the manager is indicating what capital request and what we're going to be doing with capital request. But she's anticipating putting 250,000 into stabilization. Capital improvement stayed the same at 500,000 each from the prior year on road reconstruction. That's where we match Chapter 90 monies to keep the roads at the same level of serviceability, which is not good, but it's better than erosion. And that's just holding the line on the roads. Free cash, again, for capital improvements last year was 275,000. Again, referring back to the managers approved or recommended approval of capital requests. They're looking at $1,700,000 in free cash to fund capital improvements this year over last year. So basically, our budget has increased over last year, total from $41,630,794 to $42,792,895, or $1,163,101, or 2.8%, basically. So that's it in a nutshell, and that's our 10,000-foot view of the budget starting with. Does anybody have any questions on that?
No.
If none, I would say let's go back to the back page of our handout where we break out the budgetary summary, or keeping it at the 10,000-foot level, and look at starting with total for general government, which was 6% of the budget, as you can see. And this year, FY22, compared to last year, FY21, general government has increased $186,091, or 7.8%. 2 years prior, FY20, it has increased $546,721, or 27%.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this is Joan. I have a question now. Where it says on the first page, selectmen salaries.
Yes.
Okay. Board of Selectmen, it says 4 at $2,000, but it's a $13,000 appropriation. Is that a typo?
We should probably go over this when we do selectmen. That's
Okay.
not, yeah, right now, this is just really for your information, these
Okay.
summary sheets. We haven't gone in front of the Board of Selectmen yet. So this is really, we're focusing, I think, today on the other departments. But you
Okay.
know, I'm sure that Jen, when we get to that, in that presentation, she'll be happy to explain what her thought process is.
On
Okay.
the board, with the board. Yeah, because it mathematically, Joan, to your point.
You're right,
Yeah.
it doesn't, I agree, but it's done that way for a reason.
Okay. So I guess we'll get to that right now, I'm just staying at the 10,000-foot level, giving everybody a general overview of where the money's going, starting
Okay.
with a $42 million budget here, where things are going, just because we're going to be getting in starting next week, department by department. And the one thing I think we want to get into.
We have departments here tonight. We're going departments tonight as well, so.
Yes.
The one thing we want to get in is basically, just so everybody understands, I think that we're people driven. I mean, the town is run well by people. And so staffing becomes the question where we've lost people or we've added people, and what their roles are, and defining how our money's being spent, where their focuses are. So when you really get down to it, it's not about paper clips, it's about people and the cost of people and their roles in the community, in the various departments. So those are the things I would be asking questions on. I'm sure you would as well, and we'll have other things that we'll question as well. But we're trying to be the eyes and ears of the community and ask these questions so that hopefully our town meeting, these questions won't have to be asked a second time. If any questions would be asked, it'd be questions that we didn't ask, as opposed to questions that we've already asked, so that we can minimize and expedite town meetings. So go back to public safety. It's 10% of our budget, and it's gone up $288,598 or 7.9% over fiscal 21. Over fiscal 20 voted, it's gone up $495,968 or 14%.
Mr. Chairman, if I could for a moment, fiscal 20, you're seeing the actual figures there, not the budget figures.
Yeah, it is the actual figure, right?
Okay,
Actual
just
spent.
for clarification, that's what was spent, not what was voted.
Right, spent. And as clarification, to your point, Katie, what we voted and what we spend, the difference between those two numbers is called free cash. In other words, people want to know how do you get this free money?
Well,
Where do you go?
not necessarily, because you're looking at fiscal 21 voted versus fiscal 20 actual. So you're not seeing what the fiscal 20 budget was, but yes, to your point, if you had fiscal 20 budget there and you were to see the difference and there was a surplus, that would roll into what we know as free cash.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. So, all right. So I just want to clarify that versus the tax levy. All right. So the public safety, that's up, as I said, 288,000. Public works is up 260,000. That's 9% of our budget, 267.5. 2 years ago, actual, like Katie said, voted was 391 or 11.6. Human resources, 1% of our budget. It's gone up 40,000 over a prior year, 11.2%. And we'll get into some of that. And over 2 years, over what was voted in 2020, it's gone up 107,986 or 37%. Cultural recreation, which is 2% of our budget, has gone up 65,892 or 9.5%. And over 20 actual, it's gone up 28,000. It actually went down over the prior year in 28,493 or 3.9%. Debt service has gone down over last year, 15,970 or 1.2%. Over actual in 2020, it's gone up 22,129 or 1.7. Employment benefits have gone up $276,856 or 3.75%. Over actual 2020, that's gone up 792,975 or 11.2%. And I'm sure we all are familiar with insurance and medical insurance, where that, I'm sure we'll get into it, but where that derived. So basically, our budget over FY21 went up, expenditures went up 1,101,783 or 5.68%. Over actual 20, it's gone up 2,385,714 or 13.18%. So when you look at education, total, it's gone up $607,770 or 3.9%. Over actual 20, it's gone up 1,207,888 or 6.3%. So when you look at our total budget, our increase over FY21 expenditure projected is 1,709,560 or 4.38%. Over what was actual in 20, it's up 3,658,692 or 9.86%. So there's your 10,000 foot view of the budget as it stands now. And now we could get into is it Chris, our assessor? Chris, are you there? I can't see with I got to get my glasses on. Chris, are you there?
Yes.
I see. Oh, now I see it. I put my glasses on and they fog up, so I'm going to be doing this all night.
Okay. Well, before I get going, I want to thank you for having me here so I can present my budget, and also to first apologize if my dogs decide to interrupt me. Depends on delivery trucks or panel vans that drive by, they may go off. So if they do, I'll mute myself so that you don't have to listen to them, and then I'll jump back in when they've calmed down. So I'm going to share my screen. I have a little presentation to do about the assessor's budget and the assessor's office a little bit. So I'm going to do that now. Oop. and ask the host to let me share.
Okay, try now.
Thank you, Tim.
Oh, boy.
Okay, let me
Where are we?
start it out at the end of the presentation. Here we go. That's what I get for reading through it. All right, so the assessor's office 2022 budget. What do we do in the assessor's office? Clearly, we value all the real and personal property for the purpose of setting a tax rate. This includes for fiscal year 21, 5,893 real parcels. So those are real estate parcels. And we value approximately 500 personal property accounts. Only 175 of those are taxable. But in order to determine which ones are taxable, we have to value all of them. We process about 250 exemptions. Typically, that's been a lower number, but we've had good participation, good outreach from the senior center for the senior exemptions, and we've had a little uptick in the past year. So that's a good thing. Our seniors getting some tax relief that they've earned for paying taxes as long as they have. And in a typical year, we process usually between 450 and 550 motor vehicle abatements. And so these are for people that move out of town, trade in a vehicle, sell a vehicle, or otherwise are eligible for an abatement. So that's the sort of the activity we do. I mean, there's a lot more to it, but this is more of a I guess, as Chairman Yule would say, a 10,000 foot view of the office's activities. And generally, a typical year, we'll run through, on a bad year, 50 real estate personal property abatements. So these are things where people disagree with their value, and they challenge that with the board, and then there's a process we go through to adjudicate that. What did our office accomplish in 2021? A long, hard road. We were able to fully implement the Vision Camera system. This is the software we use for valuing real property. It's very complicated and involved software and a very complicated and involved upgrade process. Some of the things that we were able to do in addition to that is integrate GIS with Vision. So this ties in mapping with our parcel information. Allows us to do some spatial analysis with the values and sales and information like that. Online record card system. This had gone offline as our old software became unusable. And we were able to get that back online this year. A great benefit for our taxpayers and realtors, and a relief for the office staff, as it's a self-help program, so people can get the information they're looking for on their own without having us do it for them. And probably one of the ones I'm most proud of is that our office worked seamlessly, continued to provide all of our services, always had people in the office to answer the phone all the way throughout the pandemic. So if a taxpayer had a question, we were there to answer it. So we weren't at full staff in the office, but there was always someone there to answer the phone. So something I'm proud we were able to do. 2022, our goals, clearly now we have fully running software. Put it in perspective, let's say we went from a 1970s Pinto to a brand new Ferrari. We haven't even scratched the surface what we can do with the software now. And we want to further leverage the new features and functions we get to make it better, make our office more responsive. Some of the things on my short list are, pushing name and updates into the Vadar system so that we can, between ourselves and the collector's office, make it easier to process CMLs, enhanced functionality of GIS system, allowing the public to be able to pull their own abutters list. They won't be certified to still to come through our office, but sometimes people just want to look at a list of their neighbors. And, you know, being able to put that online so they can do that themselves. Customer reporting, again, like I said, it's a new software. So there's a lot of reports we can do that we do as a one-off right now that we might be able to put together for frequent requests we get from the public. You know, a butters list is an example, but that one's built into the system, but things like that. And fiscal 22 is our last interim year before we do our first reval year under the new schema where it's a 5-year cycle. In previous, it was a 3-year cycle. So I'm not sure what new wrinkles the DOR will introduce, as they haven't done a deep dive into our assessing practices. And it will be at 5 years instead of the normal 3-year cycle. So we'll be doing some preparation work with that. So now I'll move right into our budget, since that's what we're here for. I think, as Chairman Yule had referenced, salaries, people are the biggest part of our budget, and that's true in the assessor's office. We have a 3-member board of assessors. I'm the chair, and there are 2 other members. Those 2 additional members get a stipend of $500 each. And then there's my salary and 2 salaries for the assistant assessors, who I think the public would recognize are extremely helpful, wonderful people to work with. So we want to keep them around. Moving on from salaries, we have a few services we outsource. One is updating our maps. This is not only the paper maps that are in the hallway outside of our office. This is also the GIS information, as I mentioned earlier, integrated with our GIS system, but the DPW also uses these updated digitized maps for their GIS efforts, which, I mean, I'm sure they would go into on their own, but you know, they have some pretty fantastic GIS information with fire hydrants and water lines and all the information that's pertinent to their thing. So they use our maps, you know, as
Yeah,
a
I think
base.
Chief talked about flow rate on the hydrants being one of the critical issues. So they know what. the
Yeah,
hydrant-
you're away from where I have any expertise, but I just know that they're a customer of that $4,500 line item. So
Yeah.
that's something that, you know, I want to highlight. And then RRC personal property, this is a significant portion of revenue, and in order for us to maintain this in-house, we couldn't possibly hire a person or train our staff to keep up with the laws and rules and regulations that we're able to do for the $18,000 we pay to outsource it to a company that does a really, really good job, pays attention to all the laws, all the regulations. It's, you know, how's the old term go? You outsource your headaches. That's what we do with personal property. So that's actually the biggest non-salary portion of my budget is the outsourced services.
Well, Chris, going back to 2020, we had a data collection clerk at 48,000. We don't have that anymore. So you've shifted, I'm assuming, that those funds to some of this outsourcing?
No. If we go back to salaries, the there was in 2020 was a senior clerk and a junior clerk. They've been reclassified as assistant assessors. So it's the same people. They've just been given different titles that more align with the work that they've actually been doing.
Okay, so all of a sudden you switch them up. Okay. All right.
Yes. Yeah. So I believe if you look at the full sheet, you'll see that that was defunded. that position,
Yes.
and the assistant assessors have been funded.
So you just move them all up to assessors. Okay. Assistant assessors. Two
Yep.
full-time. Got it. So
Okay.
you're still at three.
We're still at
Yourself
three
and
on the staff, yes. 3 staff in the office, 2 members of the Board of Assessors beyond myself.
Gotcha.
Okay. So outsourcing, these are the same vendors we've had, both of them for a number of years. So they're very familiar with Oxford. They're very familiar with what we do. So and actually RRC does a significant portion of the state for personal property. So it's actually works well when we do present that information to the Department of Revenue, that they know, you know, oh, it's RRC. Okay, so they know what their reports look like. They know what, you know, that they do. They know their quality of work, I guess is the best way to put it. So
Sure.
supplies and miscellaneous, very boring part of my budget. You can see it's a low dollar amount. And when I put my budget together, these are based on either historical actual costs we've used or actual quotes for the services and the supplies that we'll need. That being the case for the Marshall and Swift commercial and residential valuation. That's where we're buying data. So this, like I said, is a very small dollar amount. But these numbers, I don't try to pad them. I try to keep them honest for what we need to keep the office running and to provide the valuation of software and generate the tax revenue for the town. So there's nothing really exciting there. Again, travel, education, and dues, the smallest portion again. We do have a vehicle that we can use. So our mileage reimbursement is for those situations where we have to travel to Boston for ATB cases. It's not for us traveling around town. As far as the associations, it's Worcester County, Massachusetts International Association of Assessing Officers. Again, that includes training seminars and things like that. So we do get our value out of those. Even though they're small dollars, I do like to defend the fact that it's not frivolous spending. It is a value added thing for myself and the other assistant assessors. So, so my budget totals, I think as Chairman Yule had pointed out, we are clearly salary, and if you consider outsourced services, a labor intensive office. Seeing that it's over 98% of our budget is labor. So at this point, you know, this is the breakdown of the budget. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Anybody on the committee have any questions? Chris? I have a couple. Going back to our tax levy and the surprising increase of $945,000 roughly. Can you give us an insight, you being the assessor on new growth, and where you see us as far as taxable real estate in the community, whether it's business or residential, and why the $945,000 increase? What do you derive that from? What from your catbird seat? Where do you see that having had that positive effect?
Well, I'll be honest, I don't have the number in front of me, but when I listened to your 10,000 foot overview, you sort of touched on it. 2.5% of the levy is about $600,000. And then when we talk about $225,000 to $250,000 in new growth, now you see us getting right into that, you know, $900,000 range. If I had the numbers in front of me exactly, I would gladly spell that out for you. But when you talk about that, that's right in the ballpark of just 2.5% that we're able to increase the levy, and adding into that new growth. So new houses, new construction, remodeled houses, people adding sheds, pools, decks.
Okay. And that, of course, I don't know how COVID's affected that, but you're saying new growth's about 225? To something like that, okay.
That when you're talking about going
Just-
from fiscal year 2020 to fiscal year 2021,
Yeah.
as we look into fiscal year 22,
Mr. Chairman, and Chris, if I may, what John's talking about is the revenue budget that I put together. So every year we estimate new growth at 225. It's a conservative estimate. So Chris can answer any questions as to say what it was last year, what he predicts it to be this year, but this is just budgetary. He didn't have any part in that except we budget the same number every year. So just so we're clear and Chris knows where we're coming from.
Okay, well, Chris, what do you see on growth, on new growth? Because whatever we budget, if new growth is in excess of it, then it's money we didn't anticipate. I was just wondering with COVID, what you're seeing. You're out there on the field, you're out there pounding the field, you're seeing these building permits, and whether it's a new pool or a new shed or a new home, or a business or a residential. Are you seeing any kind of activity? I keep hearing on that Home Depot's doing so well because we're all fixing our houses. I raised my hand and fixing mine. So what are you seeing?
okay. As far as numbers, I haven't put a measurement on those because it's chicken and the egg when you start looking at sales analysis and sales analysis versus the new growth piece of it. So there's a little more involved than just saying that, but building additions have been rampant.
Okay.
So not far more rampant than new houses. We haven't had, as I've seen driving around other towns, and I'm sure you have, the development sprouting up. But we've had a lot of one-off houses, more than we have in years past. In addition to that, like I said, the big area has been additions, people putting garages with family rooms over. That has been incredible. Family rooms being added on just in general when houses that already have garages. So a lot of people adding non-bedroom living space, I guess would be the best way to put it. So not
Okay.
dining rooms, not kitchens, but family room type of areas. So that has been throughout town, I think throughout central Mass when you move away from the urban areas.
Sure.
In addition to that, and what makes it more difficult to estimate the growth impact of that is the housing values have been, for lack of a better term, absolutely through the roof. Houses that we had assessed in the middle 200s a couple of years ago, in a 240 to 270 range, are
Yes.
set for 390 to 425 now. And we're not talking, the big colonials. We're talking, the Sherwood Forest standard houses, 1,500 square foot capes, flips, houses that are flipped that I would question the quality of the reconstruction, but are selling for high 300s, low 400s. So there's been a real estate boom in the prices. So it's becoming a double-edged sword with both new growth and values increasing. I
Sure.
think we started seeing that this year, and we've received some questions. And for fiscal year 2022, where we'll be using the calendar year 2020 sales, that's going to be significant.
And then I'm sure you alluded to reval every 5 years, but it's coming up in 23. What hasn't exchanged in sales or turned over in sales, you'll probably be picking it up on the reval in 23, I would think, if markets.
It's a little bit different, and I essentially do 95% of the reval work every year. Part of that is I still have to get certified every single year with the Department of Revenue. So all of my statistics need to meet. So all of the work is done every single year. What goes on beyond during a reval year is that instead of me giving total to the Department of Revenue. I give them my actual work, and they look at my actual work and compare that. So I won't be picking up anything additional during a reval year. It'll just be further scrutinized.
Okay. Just kind of, okay, checks and balance to what you've already submitted, basically. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, your budget is basically, it's all salary driven, $7,800 or 4% over the prior year. I think in the salary section, total is $8,868 increase, about 4%. So of your budget. So you're at 225,902, and the prior year you were at 217,034. And again, it's basically like we've talked about. It's basically you and your staff and some outsourcing. Nothing that jumps out at anybody that I can see. I mean, seems to be pretty straightforward. Does anybody have any questions of Chris other than what he shared with us so far?
Makes sense.
If not, thank you, Chris, for your time.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you so much.
Have a great night.
You too. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I may make a comment, I should have mentioned earlier, and it actually, where we're talking about salary-driven budgets, I should mention that the fiscal 22 pay plan has not been modified. So any increases in salaries are just step increases for fiscal 22, because we didn't know where this pandemic is going. So there hasn't been a modification to the pay plan. So that's
Okay,
just
good.
the board's information.
Well, I'm glad you chimed in with that, Kate, because that was one of the questions I was going to be asking when we got to the HR department on where they are on the new pay plan and the job descriptions and some of that stuff. And as well, we are with step increases and in general increases, but save that for another day when they're in front of us. But that's good to know. I mean, that makes that.
Well, and I should mention that there will be, of course, the collective bargaining agreements that will have increases.
Sure.
In addition to step increases, but they can speak to that as we get to those departments. But, generally, as a whole, excluding the school and those with collective bargaining agreements, we're only having step increases for fiscal 22.
Okay, great. That's good to know. All right. Who's next? Up next is Jillian Connor, Treasury. You there? I see you. Okay. Put my glasses up, put my glasses down. All right.
They fog up real quick. Mine do the same thing.
Yeah, they do.
So I also have a PowerPoint. It's not as detailed as Chris's, but I have a pretty small budget. So I am going to go ahead and share my screen right now as well.
Okay.
There you go. Hope you guys can all see that. So I will just start off with, not everybody knows exactly what the Treasurer Collector's Office does. I'm sure you all know that I collect taxes. But one of the, I just highlighted a couple of our responsibilities here in the office. We are responsible for the custody, receipt, disbursement, and reconciliation of all town monies, including all town funds, receivables, trust funds, and state and federal grants. In our office, we also develop cash management procedures, including forecasting and maximizing cash flow. We also maintain internal financial controls and procedures. We issue municipal debt and borrowing in this office. We actually just had a short-term borrowing today. And TD Bank was a winner on that one again, I think with 0.38%. So I'll be up in front of the selectmen soon, having them sign off on that one.
How much was it? 0.38%?
3.8, I believe, was the TD Bank. The last, I think, 3 that we've had, TD Bank has come in as the winner every single time, and they were more on par with everybody else this time. Usually they're drastically lower, but 0.38 was our borrowing, and it's a little over 2 million.
Okay.
We also reconcile monthly with accounting. Our treasurer and collector book are reconciled monthly. And then we also issue and collect all sewer, excise, real estate, and personal property bills. That's just a small little bit of information that our office handles on a day-to-day basis. Our budget is pretty straightforward. I didn't put as much detail. I figure you all have the papers in front of you, so I don't have as much as Chris had on the screen, pretty basic. But the first line, I am doing our treasury and collections, and then I'll do our debt service afterwards. So the first box there on the sheet is our salary. Not much changed there. And like Katie said, it's just step increases for right now. The next line is under services and supplies. It's professional services.
So you're just an office of 3 people, right? That's basically it, Joe.
Our office is only 2 right now. We were 3 until COVID, and Dee has actually, she was our full-time clerk. She has moved over to the selectman's office. So it's just myself,
Cool.
the treasurer collector, and an assistant treasurer collector right now.
And do you envision that changing, or are you comfortable with at the current level?
I'm hopeful. I definitely can see a need in the office right now. Is our even with excise taxes, we have about 14,000 bills that are due right now, so it's very busy. It doesn't really leave me much time in the day to get anything else done, other than balancing those bills. And even though we're not open to the public, it's still been extremely busy. People still coming to the window, and Cindy's been a great help at the customer service window, being able to take payments, and that's been very helpful because there are still those people who want to pay in cash, and that's understandable. So we have been able to continue to do that through Cindy. As far as the professional services, we do use Kelly Ryan for our bill printing. So that's a huge help. I can't even imagine trying to push out thousands and thousands of bills through just Cheyenne and I. So that's a big help. They do mail them. They don't charge us anything for the excise mailings because that's their, bread and butter service. They make their fees off of the deputy part of their collections for our excise bills. So after they're due and demanded, they then make their fees on the deputy collecting. They do charge a fee for our printing of our real estate, personal property, and sewer bills. And then in regards to that line as well, and parking tickets. The Harper's line item isn't really, that's not something that I had put in there. That is Joanne, and I believe she will talk a little bit more on that. I know that she's added quite a few lines here, like the onboarding and the insurance module that I'm sure she'll go over with you guys when she goes into her budget a little bit more in detail.
Yes, okay.
And the next line is our banking fees. We use Veribank to help. They monthly report to us and basically just tell us that the banks that we use and the banks we have our money with are still in good standing and that there's no issues. So that's very important for us to have knowledge and anything forecasted in the future if our banks are not doing good, that we can, move the funds out of there and go somewhere else. And then the bank depository service fees are just any stop payments or anything that needs to be done if we are charged those fees. The next line is supplies and miscellaneous. Mostly made up of this line is our envelopes. We do go through quite a bit of envelopes just between, mailing people, especially right now during COVID. There have been a lot of people requesting copies of their bills for their taxes this year. And if it's an elderly, we would mail them a copy of that if they're unable to come pick it up, or if email doesn't work for them. We have been mailing those things out. And then mostly rubber stamps, anything. If we have a lot of stamps in our office that are either dated, and so the dates will expire and we have to order new stamps. I did recently order a couple stamps to help expedite our daily turnovers, because we do put a batch number on those, and sometimes we have 20-25 turnovers that we have to hand write a batch number on. So I did recently design stamps and order those to make it a little bit speedier for us to write all the batch numbers on. The next line item is special forms. One of the things to highlight about this is that through the Collins Center, we've been implementing some new policies and procedures. And one of the main things that we're looking to do is that prior to the partial payment receipts have not been numbered. And it's really important to have them numbered so that we can track how many partial payments, whose partial payment is what, and it's easier for us to research. And that is something that the Collins Center had recommended in the policy and procedures. So I will be ordering all new forms for 2022 to start that process. Other than that, treasurer turnovers, we still do like the 3-ply so that we have a copy. It's preparated too, so that the department that's turning over the funds gets our signature, showing that they turned over the money. The other copy is for the accounting department, and then they can keep a copy of the full turnover as well. So there are still some departments that prefer to use those instead of the computer generated turnover forms. The next one is travel. While we didn't do any of that this year, I am still hopeful for 2021 to be able to attend UMass Amherst. It's a huge, networking and just learning experience for myself and Cheyenne. I'm a certified collector, but I'm still working towards my treasurer certification. And because of school last year, didn't happen. I'm a little delayed on that. And Cheyenne actually is ready to test for her assistant collector's certification, which she would have done last year had we had school and testing. So I'm hopeful that we'll be able to figure something out and they'll be able to get something in the works for this summer. We usually go in August.
Is the 58 cents there, cost per item, is that just cost per mile? I just want to confirm. Okay, got it. Thank you.
Not a problem. The next one is our education and dues. We are both, Cheyenne and myself, are a part of the MCTA as well as the Worcester County Collector Treasurer Association. Usually it's just a great networking. We have the listserv that I have utilized. I can't even tell you how many times this year, just with the pandemic, trying to reach out and see what other towns are doing. I recently did it because we were getting bombarded with phone calls and people wanting to pay in person with their excise taxes that went out. So I kind of had reached out and looked for some assistance from other treasurer collectors just to see what they were going through and what they were doing to make things a little easier. The next line is our bonds and our insurance. We are both bonded, and that was something we actually just renewed that is required for myself and Cheyenne. And the next line item, which is our biggest one, is tax title. We had a lot of changes in fiscal 20 for our tax title, as well as a lot of, I would say, accomplishments. We did in June of last year, we signed on with a new law firm, D'Ambrosio and Brown. The best thing about them, they have been more of a, Jen likes to call them a pit bull. They're a little more aggressive with it. And the great thing about them, and it's been so helpful, especially with just the two of us in the office, is that they handle all of the conversations between a delinquent tax title person and either whether it be a payment plan or them trying to get payment. All of the calls are forwarded to D'Ambrosio and Brown. So it's just one central voice speaking for the town through our lawyers. And that has been very beneficial. We've had, even during the COVID pandemic, we've had 11 accounts pay off just since they signed on last year. With over $100,000 collected in whether it just be partial payments, people are, still working on payment agreements, or the full 11 accounts that were paid off, which to me, I think is huge considering we are in a pandemic. Our collections haven't wavered. We still are at very similar standing for our real estate collections and our excise collections as we have been in prior years. So I do think that's a pretty big accomplishment, and goes to show you that, people are still paying. They're still paying their bills, and our cash flow has been good.
Now, you had on tax title, you had requested 52,600. The manager recommended 25. The year prior was 15, so it's 10 over the year prior. What did you see in requesting the $52,600 that's there? Is there something? Are we still waiting on some properties that are delinquent that you saw that you wanted to increase it to 52.6, but we're kind of waiting to see if we can maybe in-house rectify some of these delinquencies, or what did you see to request 52.6 on tax
Sure.
title?
Sure. So I wanted to be more aggressive, especially with our new lawyers being more aggressive. I am looking to try, and we were only able to because we were only given 15,000 last year. I've only been able to file 6 properties in land court. While yes, we weren't able to file in the beginning of the year, it did open back up in the summer, and we just the funding for it isn't there, and so I was increased. We might be able to go after a few more properties. And a lot of times, the filing in land court will get the ball rolling. If people, haven't been aware that they're in tax title, or, kind of put their head in the sand, getting something from land court, while it does cost money, usually gets the ball rolling a little bit faster, as well as an auction this year. And I'm hopeful for an auction next year as well.
I saw the auction being advertised on cable, so.
Yeah. I am hopeful for a spring auction. We did have it scheduled for January, which because of COVID, it was delayed. We just occupancy wise weren't able to hold it. With the COVID cases going down and hopefully occupancy going back up, we will be able to have something in the spring. I'm thinking probably late spring, but that is our goal, to get some of the properties we have back on the tax rolls, as well as generate some revenue for the town. And ideally, I would like to work on land of low value. While not a huge income, it's something that we haven't done in a while, filing land of low value. So we do have some properties that need to be certified through the state as land of low value, and then the town can foreclose on them that way, rather than going through the land court.
Oh, good.
So that is something that I'm hoping to do in fiscal 22 as well.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, good.
Bond fees are the last one. That is something we do have to do every year through Moody's. And then capital, we have no capital. And then the last thing on mine is debt service. So that would be our maturing short-term debt and long-term. And that is probably on a separate page for you folks. So there really isn't much change there from prior years. We're pretty much making the payments that have been set up. They're generally the same year to year.
Yeah, debt service is pretty much, we're at 3 million, man, we're at 3 million, 1,360,522, and the year before, FY21 was 3,376,000. So it's about a $16,000 difference, basically. Debt service reduction over the FY21. Nothing really comes out at me. Borrowing rates are probably as low as possible, so that's good at this point. I don't think they're getting you lower.
Absolutely.
And I think we have some debt coming off the books in the next year or two. So that's good. If we want to entertain any future borrowings. Anything else you want to share with us?
Nothing else that jumps into my mind right now.
So you're basically, you're at an $18,448 increase, 9.68%, basically. And most of it is in your increase in title from 15 to 25, which I'm sure will pay dividends.
And then
If not,
in professional services for
and professional services, and salary was only up $3,900 or 3.2%. So it's basically, hopefully, with the auction and everything, it may shock some people into coming in on their own volition and pay their back taxes, seeing not wanting to be part of the next auction, so to speak. So that's good. Any questions from anybody on the committee? If none, thank you, Jillian.
Thank you so much. Have a good night.
You too.
Thank you.
All right. Tim Lamont, where are you at? Well, you're back there.
How you doing?
Very well, and you?
Good.
So you provide us our cable access, which hopefully everybody avails himself of, and we're on it tonight.
Yes.
You want to explain what your requests are and
My
what you
requests,
see?
my requests are just pretty much buying equipment needed to do the basics for cable access. So the big item is the playback system, which is what controls the channels and also the video server to play the videos and also to go live. But it also gives us the bulletin board, which we can also access remotely to put up any urgent messages, if there's any school cancellations, any weather issues.
So no one has to physically come into the building here. If the superintendent declares an emergency, it can go out,
Right, I can receive an email or
mail, and
text,
you
and I
can remote do that. It saves time and
Mhm.
becomes more times, and those things are time sensitive. So.
yeah, especially today because everything's remote. So
So this would provide that capability. They will have remote access. Anything other in the playback system?
well, we also need a playback system. So like right now, I just have media players looping the meetings and the programs, but a playback system would let me be able to say, okay, at 9 o'clock, this will exactly play at 9 o'clock. This will play at 10 o'clock. But right now, we don't have that system in place.
So you could actually almost have like a calendar if people wanted to set their VCR or whatever they have today to tape something if they're working, or they would know to listen in at that point to see that particular meeting.
Well, yeah, that's how all cable stations work. You have
Right.
you have a scheduling
Yeah.
playback
So
system.
on the guide,
where-
you can see what's coming up next. Right.
Exactly. Yeah.
All right. So basically, that's your request, and I think it was $40,000.
Yeah, that's the big one. So the playback system and the installation of that goes up to about that price. I do have a quote. I'm still waiting on 2 others. But like one quote, for example, is $36,556. So it goes about in that range. But there's also miscellaneous things too. Like I didn't think about the battery backup system we'd have to also put on that system, because if power goes out, we can still have a battery backup on it for a few hours. So that way, at least cable and anything can still upload to homes.
Okay.
So that's why I gave that
And
kind of,
battery backup systems, depending on the length of time,
yeah.
the cost goes up.
Well, the more you
right,
spend, the
right.
more hours you have. Yeah.
Usually on a server, you put a robust system versus
Yeah.
a PC. Yeah. Okay.
But then like other items too, what I'd want to put a modern high definition system here at Town Hall for meetings, and also one at the school for the school committee meetings too. So that's what the multicam systems are. And these are all one-time purchases too. Like these aren't every year. These are just to hold up for like 5 to 8 years. You don't have to replace them all the time.
So, looking at the PEG access budget, it's 120,000. You had requested 148, and I think the difference was what we're talking about, equipment, 75.9 versus what we're recommending,
I would
47.
Yeah, that's why I requested, but I can make things do with that. I would just have to, I just wouldn't be able to purchase some things, so I would just have to keep, lugging this equipment around to different meetings.
Okay.
But if it's what I have to do, I'll do it. But
Let me ask you something. What does Spectrum Charter provide the community as far as dollars on an annual basis?
so they provide the yearly grant contribution of
Which is-
10,000 a year.
Yeah, and then, but isn't there more than that?
Yep. So then there's the PEG quarterly fees. So
Yeah,
in
how
your-
much,
in
what
your
does that
cable
come
bill.
out to?
So in November, it was a little over 64,000.
Okay,
And in February, it was a little over 60,000.
okay.
It fluctuates because you have people that drop cable television, then people can move in. And
So now at 124 plus the 10 grant, that's 134.
well, that's quarterly. So you'll be getting like a little over 170 a year.
170,000 a year. Okay, so let's just round there, 170. Your budget is going to be 120. So the town accrues a surplus for other purposes of 50,000, if I'm doing the math correctly.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just interject in this, because this is I worked with the manager to recommend the 120,000.
Sure.
Because this PEG access, we accepted the statute, which is, the state's legislation, which is a receipt. This is a reserve account. So it's a receipt reserved for appropriation. So we can't spend what we don't have. And right now, I project through May, we'll only have about 120,000 to be able to appropriate. So that's why the budget's there, because we can't appropriate more than we have at the moment that we're appropriating it. That's what.
Basically, there's a timing difference. Because our fiscal year, their quarters and our quarters, they don't mesh up. But
Right.
if you were to look at it from an annualized standpoint, 120 is your budget, 170 is going to at some point come home to roost, whether it's in fiscal 22 or fiscal 23. If you took a 12-month slice of the pie, so to speak, and there's an overlap to Katie's point.
Yeah, and that's why I was saying it's totally fine with the 120 because it's all just slowly like building up.
But now you need this equipment. What equipment are you? Well, what are we using for equipment now? Is that your equipment?
A couple of these mics are mine, just to just make things easier for tonight's weird little setup.
Sure.
This equipment came in a couple of months ago, so this is like a 3-cam robotic system and switchers in the back. I ordered that when I was hired in August, but because of COVID, everything video and streaming was back ordered.
Sure.
And also everyone was buying it up too because of COVID.
Right.
So in here, what's mine right now is a few microphones, but I do still use my live stream unit for school committee meetings to stream on their Facebook. So that way the parents can watch.
It's nice of you to do that. It's not fair of us to impose on you. You're the employee. I mean, it'd be great if every employee brought their own PC to work.
Well,
we could save a lot of money that way.
Yeah, I know, but also like, I'm new in town. Like,
Sure, no, I understand.
I care about it and liking everyone. So
I appreciate
so I'm completely fine. We're providing a little bit. I just don't want to use like all of it all the time. You're
right on, and that's kind of what I'm getting to, that we buy the equipment that we need and not impose our needs on an employee such as yourself. And that's what we, so where the money comes in or how this flows, there has to be at some point, whether between fiscal years or within a fiscal year, some reconciliation where we're not imposing on you for equipment. We own our own equipment and it's bought and paid for. Like you said, it's a one-time cost. So at some point, that 170,000 or whatever it is, or 120, depending on fiscal years, other than your salary, is money that we can use for purposes within the town beyond these needs.
Well,
at some point, am I wrong in saying that, Katie?
Well, I think that the cable contract probably has specific purposes for those funds, and we need to appropriate it, within that scope. But it has to be appropriated, and we have to have the money available.
It just seems to me that even if it's earmarked for PEG, it's based on this budget and what I'm seeing here, unless we have something and maybe we do. Don't get me wrong. I don't know. In the future, things that we wish we could do, and later on we'll have the money to do it. We're going to have money unspent.
It doesn't hurt to have the savings. I mean, I'll make the point that when I left Millbury, our PEG Access Fund had close to 700,000 in it. So certainly we didn't spend the money every year that we were receiving.
Right.
And in Millbury, the idea was he wanted someday to build his own studio, so he had a purpose. But the other thing to think about is that, folks are trying to cut the cord, so to speak. And we're probably going to, unless they decide to figure out a way to charge for these streaming services that everyone's using and are so popular, these PEG access funds, as they're known, could dry up. So it doesn't hurt to save for that day.
For that day, okay. All right, that makes sense. All right, so at some point, maybe, as to Katie's point, that this this amount, we'll need those surpluses from prior years to pay your salary so we can continue on with this, but that's good. So you're looking at 40,000 on the capital request,
Yes.
basically.
Yep.
And I think the manager concurs, looking at what she recommended on capital request. And then you're new. We have nothing to refer prior year, fiscal 21 or 20 actual. You're at your department's at 120,000. Your salary is the 64, and the 55 is equipment, supplies, and professional services, which makes up a lion's share of it. Equipment makes up a lot of it, obviously, 47.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much, unless somebody on the committee has a question to Tim, that pretty much covers your budget, I think. You're doing a great job. I'm very pleased to see that the meetings are there, and with COVID, it was great to have you on board because we.
Oh, and another thing cool with the playback system is you can link it up to Zoom. So then when a Zoom meeting goes live from your account, that will go live on TV too. That was another cool thing I learned. But
All right, good. All right. I don't have any other questions if anyone else does. Tim, keep up the good work, Tim.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. I guess from the departments, we've covered the budget from a 10,000 foot level. I've rambled on with all the different amounts. Everybody can take time and go over it at their leisure for the next meeting if there's any questions. But beyond that, if there's any old business,
Do you want me to go through my budgets? I mean,
you want to go, you weren't on it, but if you want to,
I'm
we
here
have.
every meeting, so it's completely up to you. I should be pretty quick. I mean,
Yeah, fine, Katie.
so I don't know how it's looking to the public, but I can certainly share what my accounting budget looks like.
Yep.
It's not very exciting, we just, we're pretty salary heavy as well. It's just myself, the finance director, and Trish, who's there in person, our assistant town accountant. And, as you may or may not know, as the finance director, I'm also the town accountant by statute. There's a statute for the town accountant, so I fill those statutorial obligations.
Right.
And that consists of reporting for the most part, overseeing an audit, and I work with the budgeting. And Trish is, as my assistant, she does a lot of the meat and potatoes work. She reconciles all the cash accounts, as Jillian touched upon, with the treasurer, and that's a very important part of the job. It's very, very important. She also reconciles all the receivables and oversees the payables. And there's always a lot of miscellaneous tasks that we handle. Some of the most important things are reporting to the state and, overseeing the audit. So as we can see here, I'll scroll up the requests and how it stood in the prior year.
Your salary budget went down from FY21.
It did. We had a third person in there. Initially, when I walked in here, we had 4 positions in the accountant's budget. And it seemed as if to me, having not been here before, but from what I could tell from the history, that the 4th position was used maybe for, they had often interns from different colleges, but generally it wasn't really used. The 3rd position was Trish before I got there. So we've managed to consolidate it down to just the 2 positions. We did have someone in that 3rd position, but she gave her notice last January, and we've been able to, with the help of our floating clerk, which we'll get to in the Memorial Hall budget, and prior senior worker, we've been able to accomplish what we need with the 2 people. So yes, we have a reduction there.
Well, my hat's off to you that you're able to do that, you and Trish, because Trish is sitting right here to my right and does the minutes and does a great job. And
She does a heck of a lot of work. She does.
So that's again, it's all about people, but your budget went down. So I just want to make note of it.
Yeah, we
Go
keep
ahead.
as I scroll down, the next biggest part of our budget is really the audit, and that, although you don't see the decrease here, it did go down from where it was initially. We had a new audit firm come in when I started in 2017, and with a new audit firm, there are increased costs as they get to know and maybe
Right.
not know what they're getting into. And after a couple of years, he said, "This is just, I'm not doing the work that we thought we were going to do. I can't keep charging you that." So it did go down slightly, and that's reflected in here. I think it went up because there was a piece I was missing, but overall it went down. There's the end of year report audit that's in there. That's the $3,500. That's actually for the school. The end of the year reporting is to DESE. That's something that Justin puts together, but we've included it in here. So that we were, I think, traditionally paying it, and I think it may have been missing before, but overall it did go down. And then the next line with the actuarial study, this is something that Jillian kind of heads up. Jillian will contact, we have a KMS actuaries who will prepare the report that we need for OPEB every year.
OPEB, yeah.
And she coordinates that. And then Joanne in our human resources gives us the census that we need to prepare that. So it's in my budget, but they really, because I oversee that it happens, I have to make sure. So ultimately I'm responsible for it. So it's in my budget, but Jillian coordinates it and Joanne does a lot of the work. So that's really the biggest pieces of my budget. Everything else is just, travel we're not really using right now, but, we're going to maintain it. Education and dues, we are still maintaining our subscriptions, for lack of a better word at the moment, in these particular groups, but we're not necessarily going to things. Anything we've gone to has been virtual, so it's cost less than it normally would in a regular year. But anything we don't spend will roll over into our free cash, which we use for capital purposes, and we have, it seems, an unlimited amount of capital needs. So it's not bad to have a little bit of cushion there. And that's my accounting budget. It's not
Yeah,
very,
your budget's flat, 62,000 basically from the prior year, 21 to 22.
yes.
Did you want to talk about cap? No, we don't have anything on capital right now. We have,
I can go into, I'll go into Memorial Hall. Trish handles a lot of this as well. She does the supplies, she orders supplies, and that's, the heart of this budget. But we've also added a position here as a floating clerk. Right now, due to COVID, we've had a customer service window, which has been great. And currently it's covered under the CARES Act or FEMA. I mean, it's one of the two. They're kind of coordinated together. So because of COVID, it's covered under that. But we anticipate that by fiscal 22, at some point, actually, we thought half of fiscal 21, we're going to have to cover it. So we have it budgeted because it's going to be a good position, whether or not we continue with the customer service window, having that extra help for people. And as I mentioned, we utilize the Cindy, who's our floating clerk, customer service at the current time.
sounds like Jillian could use it for the excise tax that I just stuck in her mailbox. So, but it's 18,000 of them.
Oh my, she handles a lot of those people coming in during the day and a lot of other folks coming in for different things. But she also, in her downtime, which sometimes she does have between customers, she will post our receipts for us, and she does some filing on the side as well. So she's been great.
So it's working out well. You got some flexibility there where there's a squeaky wheel. She's the oil. That's
Actually,
good.
I heard something. I believe it was from the assessor's department. They were tipping their hats to her because she was cleaning up some stuff for them, and I know she's been helping in the town manager's office. So it's really been a great resource to have.
Smart.
So we've added it there in the Memorial Hall. Electricity, we have a slight reduction because I did a reallocation of solar credits. When I walked in, solar credits were allocated in one way. There's a specific form that you file with National Grid, and they'll allocate your credits to the accounts as you give the percentages in that form. And what was happening with the way the form was done in the past, there were large credits building up on small accounts. So I reallocated it so that it's going to many departments, including Memorial Hall. So the reduction here can be seen because we're trying to use the solar credits, and that's helping a little. Trish also mans the solar credits. That we have a reconciliation process, and she does the reconciliation every month to make sure that we're receiving the proper credits to the proper accounts. And she works through that. And actually, they've been a little late, and she's been very diligent on that the last couple days, and probably days to come to get that caught up.
If I recall, it's pretty daunting to go through it and reconcile all that. They don't make it easy. And if I recall, when you came on board, it was a disaster.
It was very, the report that they had, it was very cumbersome. And I do like a lot, we're tracking the national grid data. It's a good thing to have, but in the form that it was really hard to work with. So I brought over a reconciliation system that I used when I was in Millbury, which just reconciles what you're expected to get by the percentages that you have filed and what accounts they're supposed to go to. And then you can kind of plop in the number that, you get from there's a special net metering invoice you get from National Grid. You plop in that number of the kilowatts and make sure that when you get the bill from the solar company that it matches and that it allocates correctly to the accounts. It's kind of automated once that form is set up. But if there are any issues, you have to work through those. And there's a lot of copying and backup, but it's working a lot better now. As we go forward with what you'll hear about green communities and some energy saving initiatives, we may need to reallocate solar credits again, because if say we expected the electricity usage to be a certain threshold in, say, the schools, and I gave them credits based on that threshold. If they have energy saving initiatives, I may need to change that. So we'll probably revisit that a couple years down the road.
Well, what the manager's doing with the green initiative and all these LED lights, hopefully you're going to be reallocating for quite a while, because the hope is that the consumption drops dramatically in all areas.
So we may be offloading credits to someone else if that happens. So
wouldn't that be nice?
We still are offloading some credits to Charlton. And when I did the analysis, it was still necessary. So if we have more savings, then we'll probably need to unload more credits if the agreement doesn't expire by that point. So we'll revisit that as we get there.
All right. So Memorial Hall is up $13,902 or 11-point-something%. Most of it has to do with, as you said, the floating clerk, and that's pretty much it. And that seems to be money well spent from what I'm hearing.
Yep. Then the only other thing, just to mention to those that might be listening for the first time, we have a supplies budget that covers it's not just Memorial Hall. It does cover anyone that works for the town other than the school. They have their own supplies. They tend to come in and they can go into our cabinets and get things as they need them. So generally you're not going to see a high supply line on individual budgets, because we have that here. And this is what Trish manages. She manages the supplies, and then postage. You look at the fiscal 20 actual, it was down a little bit, but then with COVID, we had a lot of mail-in ballots for fiscal 21. So we increased the budget, and we're bringing it down a little for fiscal 22, but understanding that, it's probably not going to go down at this point with all the different communications not being in person. So we're going to try to see if it stabilizes out. But that pretty much covers the Memorial Hall budget.
Any questions from anybody on the committee? Katie? No? Katie?
And then I can IT if you'd like. As you know,
Wanna do what? I didn't hear you.
The IT budget.
Oh, the IT budget. Okay.
Yes, as you know, we've had a lot of different changes here. I'll go up to the top. For those that may be listening for the first time, we did have 2 full-time positions within this department when I began in 2017, and we had our IT director. I think I knew when I walked in the door when she was going to be retiring. So we made a plan to make this work without staff. I had that model when I worked in Millbury. It worked really well, because there's so many things that are changing so fast. And if you're not working in it all the time, it gets stagnant and you're not even if you take some of the classes, and I don't know what they are, and I'm not sure they were taking all those classes. It's the hands-on that you're missing. You really have to be in it to know what's going on and stay current. So, and given the technology needs we have here, this makes the most sense to have a real, IT professional. So that's where it is. We kind of moved that down to the IT professional services. But I would like to mention that when I began, in addition to this 2 salaried positions, we did spend $100,000 a year on an IT professional to do some services. So in addition, so here we're still spending about 100,000. I've put in a buffer for miscellaneous projects because they always come up. And, so we're level really with that, but we've saved the 2 salary positions. And that doesn't, show you what we might be saving in insurance and, other items, taxes and such. We just recently changed our contract with our copiers from Canon to Konica Minolta. I really didn't have a good handle on Canon. I didn't have records, and there were overages that were just unexpected. I mean, you knew that they were part of the contract if you had the contract in front of you, but you didn't know what they were going to be until you got it. So we've eliminated overages, and the budget here is higher than it was in fiscal 21 because now I know exactly what I'm going to be paying. However, you'll notice it's lower than what we paid fiscal 20 actual. So we're heading in the right direction.
Okay. Yeah. No surprises. You've eliminated the surprise.
Right. And then, we have some supplies, folks need different small IT items. So that's in here for that. And hardware right now, I think what we're looking at for fiscal 22, because we just changed out just about, I think, all the computers for the town operations, but we did miss some at the library that are on the CW Mars network. So I know we're gonna have to replace those next year. And then whatever else might come up during the year. So hardware, it doesn't always just mean computers. There could be other pieces of hardware that go down too. So that budget is level. And software, excuse me, is a little bit higher, but I do feel like I'm getting a better grasp on it. As someone comes to me with, oh, I have this new need, or a bill pops up that I didn't have in this list, I'm keeping this list all year long open and making sure I add them in and keeping up with the costs so that when I go into the next budget, there aren't any surprises. So, fiscal 20 actual was very high. So we're much below that. And I think that this is a fair look at it because I've been tracking it all year through fiscal 20 and fiscal 21 to date.
So you have shaded this central square. You want to allude to that? You have police, the fire, paging, licensing, service licenses is what those dollars are?
Unshaded. That was when, as I mentioned, I'm holding it open all year. Those items are going to be needed every year, but they give us a new figure mid-year. They'll give us the figure for the next fiscal year. So that was probably shaded when I had it open, during the year, updating things just to remind myself that I needed an updated figure for that and they would be coming in. So it doesn't really mean anything to anyone else. It was just really for me.
For
and
you,
I have
okay.
it again for fiscal 23. I have my document waiting for me as I'm going through and adding new software. And that is highlighted there too to remind me that I need to update those figures. But here they are actual for fiscal, what we've been given for fiscal 22.
Okay. I see a lot of this ties into, looking at some of these, like the purchases of the Optiflex, the Dell, which is a good piece of hardware. You have library, town hall, DPW, fire, police, community center. So you're buying 30 of these. That's not just for town hall per se, then I take it. It's for all IT.
This estimate is we don't need to buy 30 computers next year. This is an estimate. If we were to buy some computers, this is what it is. We're trying to keep a level budget. We don't know what's going to come up and what the need is going to be next year.
But you projected, you've budgeted for 30 at 19.5. So you're saying whether that comes to fruition or not.
Correct.
And 30 monitors. Okay.
Yes.
And it's across all departments. My point was, it's not just the library, it's town hall, DPW, police, fire. Okay. wherever the
Right.
need.
And right now, Town Hall, DPW, COA, senior, the OCC, and most of the library has already been done. They've all been upgraded. And as you may recall, we were operating on Windows 7 and it was no longer supported. And we were also operating with Microsoft, I think it was 2007. So and that wasn't supported. So we had to get these computers that we had ordered. I think it was in the last 2 fiscal years. We got them all up and running with the current Windows system and the new Microsoft software that's a subscription base. So we're going to be up to date with the Microsoft every year, the software. I don't know how Microsoft is going to work with the operating systems. I mean, I think I'd like to think that they're going to do something similar to what Apple has done and just have an update and you always have the most up-to-date operating system. But I think that's yet to be determined. But right now we're current and that's a big step.
You're on 10. Well, the computers, and now they're 64-bit, not 32-bit. So the police department had a capital request for some computers. So they had that in their request for their upgrade some of theirs. So that would take the onus out of your 30 here. So yeah, maybe you won't need the 30 if they've already requested. I think the managers considered that in her capital request. All right.
Yeah, you got that right. I thought it'd make more sense where they needed the replacements pretty much right away to put the capital request in, get it done, knock it out, kind of like we did with the town hall and the rest of the town departments recently. Just knock it out now. I mean, we could take it out of the budget, but then if something else comes up, we don't have it now in the budget for another hardware item. And I anticipate less things coming up, but given the last couple of years, I'd just rather play it safe at this point.
Okay.
So that, I think, wraps up that budget. There's nothing else in there after you get beyond software. And I did put a little history here because it's good to note that in fiscal 17, when I came in, actually I was in fiscal 18, we wrapped up 17 when I came in here. I came in 2017, which was currently fiscal 18 at the time. So the fiscal 17 budget was $662,000 for IT. And, we've been trying to bring it down. It's got a little uptick right now, but we've had an upgrade in everything. So I think that we're getting much more at the 469,000 than we got at the 662,000.
So the increase over 21 is 23,787. So it's not huge on a $400,000 budget. And you're saying you're now in Windows 10, not Windows 7, and you're you now are going to be operating 365 software, which you're current. So you're in this millennium. That's good.
Yes, it feels good. So I think that's all I have to share. So I'm going to stop this, but I wanted everyone to be able to see.
Anybody on the committee have questions of Katie on this IT budget?
Or anything. I mean, if you went over any revenue questions, because when John went over the revenue budget, that's something that Jen and I worked on. So I have, the answers, although I can't answer for the governor, why he chose the figures he did, but I can say that's what, the state figures are. But I can, any other questions you might have.
It's funny. One area he's up, one area he's down, one area he's up, one area he's down. So the net result was about 22, 23. When you took the positives and the negatives, we came out ahead by about $23,000 over fiscal 21, moving the chairs around.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. So anybody on the committee have anything they want to offer that we've not talked about tonight before our next meeting next week, next Wednesday? If not, no old business. No new business. No committee request. If not, do I hear a motion to adjourn? We'll be meeting next Wednesday at March. Chris has already prepared all the meetings for March 3rd, March 10th, and we have a selectmen meeting, joint meeting on March 16th. Which is a Tuesday, not a Wednesday.
Now, when do we meet with the school? Do we have to meet with the school department?
When are we
That's
meeting?
And police?
March 24th.
March 24th.
Yep, the school and Bay Path.
Bay Path
Okay,
that
and what
a-
about police department?
Police Department in
That might be next week.
next week.
Oh.
I know we have,
No,
no, we have,
No, the police is the same
Patrol
night
and
as the
management
school.
and fire.
well, the fire is next week. Fire Department next week, right, Trish?
Yeah, I didn't see the police on any of the agendas.
I think she just said they're meeting on the 24th with the school department.
Yep,
So it'll be Bay Path, Oxford School, and in the police department on the
Correct.
March 24th.
Okay, thank you.
So the big change is the Tuesday, March 16th meeting, joint meeting with the selectmen.
Mhm.
Okay.
And otherwise, next Wednesday, the 3rd, and then the 10th. And I think you've sent out agendas on all those, right? The 3rd, the 10th, and the 16th.
Yes,
And I'll send you the one for the 24th tomorrow.
Oh, the 24th, we'll be getting the agenda for the 24th when it's posted for tomorrow. All right, if there's no other questions, I'll hear a move to adjourn.
so moved.
So moved.
Okay. Second?
Second,
All right, roll call? Yes,
Yes,
Mr. Yule,
yes.
Mr. Bacon,
yes.
Ms. Mazeka,
yes.
Ms. O'Neill,
Yes.
Ms. Wozniak,
Yes.
Ms. Casey.
Yes.
Don't forget your Bay Path.
Thank you.
Thank you all.